Okay, Mike says we're live.
Okay, thank you, State. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our September 28th City Council meeting. If we could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, if I could ask the clerk to please call tonight's roll.
Sure. Councilman Gary Donovan,
Councilman Gary Donovan, Councilman at Large, present.
Councilwoman Colleen O'Connor,
Councilwoman Colleen O'Connor, Council at Large here.
Councilwoman Bridget Hosky,
Councilwoman Bridget Hosky, 1st District, present.
Councilman William X. Conlon,
Councilman William X. Conlon, 2nd District, present.
Councilwoman Elizabeth Johnston,
Councilperson Liz Johnston, 3rd District here.
Councilman Mitchell Galignano,
Councilman Galignano, 4th District, present.
Councilwoman Robin Hamilton,
Councilwoman Robin, 5th District, present.
Councilman Peter Massaro, has he joined us yet? Not yet. Councilwoman Trinae McGee,
Councilwoman Trinae McGee, 7th District, present.
Councilwoman Crystal Finelli,
Councilwoman Crystal Finelli, 8th District, present.
Councilman Robert Bruno,
Councilman Robert Bruno, 9th District, present.
Councilman Barry Lee Cohen,
Councilman Barry Lee Cohen, 10th District, present.
and Chairman Ronald Quagliani.
Councilman Ron Quagliani, Council at Large, present. Thank you, Stacy. We'll now have we have a Legislative Matters Committee public hearing for amendments to the Code of the City of West Haven, Chapter 89, dogs. I'll turn it over to the Legislative Matters Chair, Councilman Galignano.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have a public hearing for the dog leash. And present are, hold on one second here. I had it up and I lost it. Just give me a second. Where'd it go? Present are Councilman Bruno, Councilwoman Johnston, Councilwoman Finelli, Councilman Cohen, and myself acting as chair. And I believe there are no public comment, Mr. Chairman, and that will close public comment on legislative matters.
Thank you, Councilman Galignano. Before we enter into public comment, I would just like to take a minute to recognize two former city officials that passed this past week. And if I could ask for a moment of silence for Leo Butcheria. Butcheria was a West Haven fireman for 31 years, started in April of 1972 and retired in June 2003. He was a firefighter inspector, and from what I hear, a pretty good cook for his crew during the shifts at the firehouse. He was also a West Haven City Councilman from 2001 to 2003. Also, if we could remember Philip Pelletier tonight. Phil was a West Haven police officer from 1959 to 1962. Not to mention his being a Korean War veteran with the United States Marine Corps. So if we could take a moment of silence to remember those two public servants. Thank you. We'll now enter public comment. I believe, Stacy, there are no public comments to be read this evening. Is that correct?
That is correct, Mr. Chairman. There are no public comments this evening.
Okay, then we'll enter into our regular council meeting, and the first order on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of September 14th, 2020. Do I have a motion?
So
Motion
moved.
to approve.
Councilman Cohen, Councilman Galignano, is there a second? Councilwoman Hamilton, Councilman Bruno, is there any discussion on those minutes?
Negative.
Seeing no discussion on the minutes, all in favor?
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Are there any abstentions? The minutes passed unanimously. There are no communications this evening to be passed out, so we will enter into committee meetings. The first committee is the Redevelopment Committee. Councilwoman O'Connor.
Good evening. It is now 7:07. The Committee on Redevelopment will be starting. The members are Councilwoman Hamilton, Councilwoman Johnston, Councilman Mitch, Councilman Donovan, and myself, Councilwoman Colleen O'Connor, acting as chairman. Tonight, we have up first, we have Freddie Missouri, who will be introducing, or maybe just letting us know that Mr. Armstrong is on the phone with us to talk about the Havens project. Fred, Mr. Armstrong?
Yep. Hi. Good evening, everyone. We're going to let Matt start off so that you can get your update on the Havens. And then I know there's some others that have emailed me some questions that we could discuss after the presentation or update from Matt Armstrong. So I'll pass it over to Matt.
Thank you, Fred. Good evening, everybody. This is Matt Armstrong. I apologize. For some reason, my camera is not picking me up, but it's nice to see you all again. I thought I would give just a brief update on the Haven project as it relates to the current demolition that is in progress, as well as sort of the broader project. I'll start with the current demolition. As I'm sure many of you have seen, if you've driven by recently, we have taken down 2 of the 4 addresses that are slated for demolition, the gas station and then what was once the check cashing business there on the corner of Water and Elm. The next building that will be scheduled for demolition is 30 Elm, the brick, what we call the antique building. There's a fair amount of remediation and emptying of the building. There was a lot of debris that remained in that building, and so the remediation is ongoing now. We owe the city a couple of documents with respect to fire and safety plan and a few other items. And I'm told by the general contractor that that building will be, oh, and I'm sorry, one other thing, we're waiting for a permit from the state to close one of the lanes of Elm Street so that we don't imperil any of the passersby during the demolition. That is already been approved and is really just now a matter of getting that letter. So that building will more than likely come down in the next 2 weeks. And then the Bilco buildings will come down after that. And I'm told that would probably be the 3rd or 4th week of October, because again, there is some more remediation to be done there and some more paperwork that has to be filed with the city and with the fire and police departments. So everything is going on schedule and as planned. We've had no incidences to date. All of the utilities have been disconnected, and I'm sure everybody will be as pleased as I am to see the beautiful view to the waterfront opening up here in the next couple of weeks as those remaining derelict buildings come down. As it relates to the broader project, the 2 updates. One is sort of on the financing side and one is on the leasing side. As it relates to financing, there was originally going to be a special session held up in Hartford this week on which we were supposed to have been on the agenda. But with everything happening in the state now with COVID and schools and business closings and all that, we were pushed back. So I believe we will have our chance at the state level before the end of the year. And that was, just to remind you all, to establish the special tax district that is needed to secure the bonds that will support the public infrastructure component of the project. And so once we clear that hurdle, that will, of course, take down a big step in terms of us being able to move forward with the broader project. Now, the other piece of this, as many of you know, in the development world, retail development world, leasing is paramount. Leasing is very, very important. And, you know, due to the COVID market disruption of the last 6 months, a lot of retailers are really focused on sort of saving their own businesses and figuring out which stores to close and which ones to keep open and what to do with furloughed employees and so forth and so on. And so, quite frankly, in the last 6 months, there has not been a lot of leasing progress, and that's not just for our project, that's on a national scale. And I'm involved with a lot of other large development companies in the US, and they're all facing the same challenges, that it's awfully difficult to get retailers to focus on building new stores when in fact they're trying to just sort of salvage the stores that they have. So hopefully, as the corona issue, the COVID issue comes into clear focus with the vaccine and with the hopefully the not the remediation, but the cure in the next couple of months, that the retail leasing progress will also pick up again. So I don't have a specific date as to when the balance of those buildings will come down, but I can tell you that it's definitely a priority for us, and that as we get the state approval and as we get the retail leasing going again, hopefully in the coming months, we'll get the balance of the site cleared and get underway here. You know, in the meantime, I think the fence has gone a long way in helping us control vandalism and theft and dumping and blight. We have hired a new property management firm that is very familiar with the city. In fact, he's a local. Many of you know him, Brian, and he's doing a great job in keeping the lawns and the properties tidy. And we've had, a lot less problems with, as I said, sort of blight and vandalism and people breaking into the property. So I think that's really the balance of my update for the evening, but I'm happy to take any questions. All right. Well, I appreciate everybody's time. And
Wait. I'm not sure. I'm
Yes.
sure there is someone that does have a question. I was having technical difficulties.
I'm sorry.
I can see a few of you right now. So does someone want to raise their hand? Okay, Gary, you raised your hand first.
Thank you, Chairman Connor. Matt, thank you for showing up at the meeting. Much appreciated, by the way.
Sure.
This project is buildings, you planning on these buildings being demolished by the end of next year, do you think?
Yes. Yes.
And, okay, and then the start of the project of rebuilding and building of the mall, possibly the year after?
Look, I would hope sooner. Again, it's really driven by the retail leasing effort and when those tenants will get comfortable reinvesting. And again, that's really driven by the COVID. So look, I would say to you, it could be the year after next, but I hope that it's not that long. But unfortunately, I can't put a date on it.
The reason why I'm asking, only because I got a lot of constituents out there that they don't think that this is going to happen. I've been telling them that you guys are in this 100%.
Yeah, we sure are.
So just publicly, I'm assuming that is correct, right?
We are heavily invested in this project, both financially as well as, our own time. I think it will help when you start to see some of these larger commercial buildings come down. I mean, you're going to see some significant visual changes to the site happening in the next 3 weeks. And I think that will sort of help to allay the rumors and the fears that we're not going forward with this. We very much are, but like everybody else in the retail business, we've been impacted by COVID, and we're doing everything we can to work our way through this.
All right, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Gary.
Thank you, Gary. Robin, did you have a question?
Not at this time, thank you.
Okay. Ron, did you have a question? It looked like you did have one.
No, but I don't know if you can see the whole screen, Colleen. I know Councilwoman Johnston has her hand up.
Okay, yeah, I could not see her. Councilwoman Johnston?
Thank you. And thank you, Matt. I think you answered my question, but I just would like clarification. So the idea that the building portion is contingent upon sort of the leasing market, does that mean that there has to be a certain number of retailers? And when you say investment, and pardon my ignorance, but does that mean that you need a certain number of retailers sort of committed before you actually start the project?
That is correct, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. That answers my question.
Sure.
All right, like I said, I cannot see everyone on the screen, but does anybody else have a question?
Councilman Bruno does.
Councilman Bruno?
Thank you. Mr. Armstrong, thank you very much for coming out and joining us tonight. We appreciate it.
My pleasure.
I have some concerns I'd like to just talk to you about for a minute. One of them being that if you see the Milford Mall, and if you look at the Trumbull Mall, they're getting out of business of retail space, where they're having a problem getting anybody to rent these spaces. I'm concerned about this. And my question is, with that happening there, let's say we can't get any retail space rented, would there be another option that you guys are considering moving this project forward in the city of West Haven?
Sure, so that's a very good question. The two malls that you mentioned, I'll say this, those are older malls built back in the 70s and 80s. They tend to have the tenants in them that are the older tenants that are not quite as sort of relevant in today's world as many of the tenants that we're talking about. Our project is going to be very different. Our project really isn't a mall. It's really a retail, dining, and entertainment complex that will have restaurants, bars, open space. And the retail that we will have are the retailers that are doing very, very well in this market. And again, if you've never been up to Woodbury Commons, I would encourage you to go up there. You go up there on a Saturday, you can barely move. It's so crowded. But we're very, very aware of the shift that's taking place in the retail industry. And we are not going to be engaging with any of the tenants that are sort of on their way down, but rather engaging with the tenants that are on their way up. Now, look, 10, 15, 20 years from now, if for some reason bricks and mortar retail no longer works there are a myriad uses that project could be repurposed for. And that's always in the back of our mind. So very, very good question, but it is something that we've given a lot of thought to, and we do believe that the project that we've got planned for there will be very, very successful in the years to come.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilman. Does anybody else have a question?
Councilman Cohen has his hand up, Colleen.
All right. Sorry, I could not see you, Councilman Cohen.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Once again, Matt, thank you for coming by this evening. We appreciate it very much. I just wanted to follow up on Councilman Bruno's question is what you had said earlier that, obviously you're taking down a few buildings. The Bilco building will be hopefully done by the 3rd or 4th week in October, and the other ones are dependent on retail lease spacing. And, I guess what I'm wondering is you made the comment, maybe 10 years down the road, if the landscape changes, I guess what I'm wondering is we don't know what the future holds, but I mean, how, I know you don't have a crystal ball, but how long are you going to continue to pursue retail. I mean, hopefully things turn around in a year from now, you'll be able to start leasing out space and so forth. And I understand the limitations, but are you looking at maybe a 3-year horizon, a 2-year horizon? I don't think you're waiting 10 years to just wait and sit on that space before it can be retail. I mean, as you know, with those other malls, they're basically converting some malls across the country into Amazon warehouses. They're converting other malls into technology corridors. They're converting other malls into mixed use. And so I'm just wondering if, how long are you planning to pursue retail? And I understand the type you're trying to pursue, and I think it's great, but, the 10 years got me a little nervous. So can you clarify that at all?
Yeah, sure. Look, I think we're going to pursue retail there immediately, and our goal, and in fact, the leases that we're signing with a lot of the tenants are, in some cases, a 10-year lease with a 5 plus a 5. I mean, it could be out 15, 20 years. So look, it is our intent for that to be a retail project well into the next 25, 30 years, if not longer. All I was saying was that if for some reason we had to repurpose it in the medium term, i.e. 10, 15, 20 years from now, we certainly could. Now, the other thing that's unique and different about this project, and again, it's not a mall, this is an open air center of multiple different building types and sizes and configurations. So this becomes a lot easier to sort of reconfigure and work with than an enclosed mall where, as you said, some of them are being converted to medical offices, some into apartment buildings. That wouldn't happen here. This has really been designed to always be retail and dining and outdoor space. I think you're on mute, Mr. Cohen. Yep.
Try that again. Just one other question.
Sure.
You had mentioned quickly before, and I may have written this down wrong, but a state tax district. You had to go to the state to get a certain district. Can you clarify that? Maybe I didn't hear it right.
Yes. So the development parcel, what we're intending to do is to create a special tax district where the taxes from that parcel can be used towards the payment of a bond to finance the public infrastructure. So the promenade along the water, the parking, the sidewalks, the curbs, the roads, the lands, all of the things that sort of benefit the city and the beauty of the site. And Lee Tiernan has been very involved in that, and I'm sure he can explain it a lot better than I can. But that was the purpose of the establishment of that district, was to support that bond.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have any questions? Robin, Councilwoman Hamilton?
Thank you, Ms. Chairwoman. Matt, I am so glad that you came, and I think that the public is glad that you came too. We desperately needed to hear this information. So again, thank you for coming. My question is, you talked about retail and you talked about dining, and everybody likes those two things. Can you kind of give us a ballpark of the percentage of each that you're looking to draw in?
Yeah, I think on the latest lease plan, we had 6 different types of dining establishments, everything from what I would call a feature restaurant down to a wine bar, other types of sort of what I'll call grab and go. So I don't know, from a percentage standpoint, I would guess probably 20 to 30% food, and then maybe 80 to 70% retail. If that's helpful.
It is. Thank you, Matt.
Does anybody else, Chairman?
Thank you, Colleen. Matt, again, I echo Councilwoman Hamilton's comments. Thanks for coming and giving us an update tonight. 2 questions, and maybe you're not the best person to ask for either of them, but I'm going to anyway. The Elm Street project, is that the monies that were put aside from the state representative Boer and others have gotten money to help take the infrastructure, widen Elm Street, so on and so forth. Is that part of your project, or is that separate?
That's part of our project. Yes.
Would that happen in the near term, or we'd have to wait until the rest of the site is being developed?
That's a very good question. I think, and I'll check with Simon, but I would say to you as a developer, I would believe that would have to be done first to accommodate the construction traffic and so forth. But if I may, I will get back to you or Fred tomorrow with a proper answer to that.
Yeah, that'd be great. I mean, I'm looking as people go through that now and they can't use that Water Street access anymore. I mean, it would seem to make sense to me that if we could get that work done sooner rather than later, it would benefit not only the development but the residents that traverse that area.
I agree. I'll get that clarified for you.
And I just wanted Councilman Cohen mentioned the special taxation district. So is that again, you may not be the right person, but is that something that you think that you have support on? And I guess if you do, that's great. If you don't, then what happens?
Yeah, no, we do. We have a very, very impressive group of lobbyists working in Hartford with us. Look, this is something that benefits the state. It benefits the city. It's one of these things where it's kind of a win-win. Nobody loses by doing this. They're fairly common. They've been done in other parts of the state. The feedback that we've gotten to date from the lobbyists that have spoken to the legislators has been very positive. And so I don't have any reason to believe that it won't happen. And look, if it didn't happen, well, then there are other forms of financing that we could pursue. So it would not necessarily endanger the project.
Okay, thank you. And we've had a couple of bumps in the last few years with dumping and, trespassers and so on. And I do think that whoever your property management team is doing a much better job. My phone hasn't been ringing as much. I can't speak to other council members or Councilwoman Johnson, but it seems the site seems to look better as far as trash and dumping and things like that. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, I agree. And by the way, my phone is ringing a lot less as well. And I have to give credit to Fred Missouri, who helped me to identify Brian, and he was very instrumental in sort of making that transition and helping me with that.
Great.
Are you done?
Thank you.
I had one question before you go, and forgive my ignorance, but when you say retail, I realize brick and mortar stores, but would that include something like a live theater, a museum, or marina? Is that something you're looking to do also, or if the right person were to come along to rent the space, or is it just retail?
No, there's a public walkway along the water that is part of this that would not include a marina. We can't do a marina there because we don't have enough depth, and of course that then involves Army Corps, and that's a whole nother can of worms. But we are going to have a public access area to the water. There will be event space, outdoor open event space for outdoor gatherings. But to answer your question, look, if somebody came in and wanted to do a live music venue, or either as part of a restaurant or on its own, I mean, the answer is yes, we would certainly entertain that, but nothing on the order of magnitude of an arena or a stadium or a kind of a theater. We just don't have the space for it.
Thank you. And I appreciate you coming tonight to speak to us. Does anybody have any final questions? All right. Thank you very much. We appreciate you coming to answer our questions.
Thank you all very much. Have a nice evening. I'm gonna jump off. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, Fred, are you still here?
I'm here.
All right. You got my list of questions, so if you want to go over those first, and then I'll take questions from the council as a whole when Fred is done with his report.
Okay, sure. Good evening, everyone. It's good to see you all. One of the questions that was posed was about the Savin Rock Conference Center. Currently, there's bids that have been received and they're being reviewed. Council is instructed I cannot discuss really anything further, but then when the proposal is presented to the public through the city council. There'll be more than enough times to vet through that process and ask any questions that you may have regarding the proposals that are sent in. There was a question regarding the Armstrong building. I can tell you, I've been, that's been one of the priorities that my office has been working with closely with the current owners and the marketing realtor for the property. There is a proposal that's being considered. I tried to get an update from the realtor to see if that had gone under contract or not, but I wasn't able to get through to them. But my understanding is that there's been other groups also, but I know that they were very close last week when I spoke to them. So my assumption is that they're still pursuing or negotiating that deal. So I don't have any details exactly of what it is, but that property is being considered to be purchased from Stop and Shop. There was a question regarding the former Staples building, 458, 480 Sawmill Road. Again, I just want to be clear, as you know, in my other position in real estate, I did have a proposal years ago for a hotel that went to get a text change. They were successful in that, and then the proposal was appealed, and the developer went on to another project. There is a current proposal for the site, which I am not financially involved in at any capacity. They've had several conversations with my staff at the land use side, and also to other departments throughout the city with their concept. And they are planning on coming in front of the Planning and Zoning Commission with their proposal on November 10th is when they're scheduled. Just to let you know, one of the fallbacks of having the pandemic and COVID and closing our municipal buildings to the general public for the most part for the last 6 months, it put a real stop on any of our land use approval process. We weren't able to have meetings until recently. We are now having our meetings off-site of City Hall. I negotiated a deal with the president of the IA Club, or Cello, to rent the hall out and have our public meetings there. There was a desire by the commissions not to have virtual meetings like many other communities are doing and have been doing through the pandemic. I recommended back in March to continue the process through virtual meetings, which was not received favorably. So we were canceling our meetings until we figured a way of either getting a cure for the COVID, that we can start having meetings at City Hall, or another option for public meetings. So I took it upon myself to have this offshoot or third venue outside of City Hall, just because we have such a buildup of applications to be heard. We really need to start moving things forward for the community. So, so we've had a couple of meetings so far. And when I say land use, just so you know, that means Planning and Zoning Commission, Inland Wetlands, Zoning Board of Appeals. And I think it's been so successful. I believe there's been other city meetings there. I heard the City Charter Committee had a meeting there. So, we're obviously taking temperatures for people that come in. We're taking their phone number and names for tracing purposes if necessary, and we're doing social distancing. The limits of the room has been up to 25, and we're hoping with the third phase, which was announced by the governor's office on Friday, that will get increased to 100 participants at one time in the room. And we'll make sure we continue with social distancing and better special egress in and out of the building. But just so you know, that's an important phase of the report that I give you, because with all the progress that we are seeing with applications coming in, we needed a way of hearing them and vetting them out through the public process, and being able to meet in person is a intricate part of that process. So I want to thank my staff, Kathy Conniff, who's been wearing multiple hats of late since Dave Colleen had retired. And she's been a wonderful asset to the office, and also Kim in my office, to coordinate between applications and applicants and their attorneys and counsel and staff, because these dates have been changing so readily. and also working with our different various volunteers on the commissions. I want to also thank their flexibility in this process. It's not been easy, but we are moving forward and hearing applications, so that's an important next step. Another question that was asked was, let's see. I apologize. I printed a couple of emails, so I'm looking down at it. Robin Hamilton asked about the Gold Medal Bakery building, where that stands. So there was, and I do have to disclose as a realtor, I do have that property. I'm the listing agent for that property, so which I did discuss prior to my hire for the city. So I just want to be crystal clear on that and disclose that. But I can give an update. The city was had given a zoning board of appeals approval for that site for Cumberland Farms. It was appealed by two abutting properties or in close proximity to that were, one was a competitor and another one was some neighbors. That's being heard through the courts because of COVID. The courts have delayed of hearing it. I think that they've given comments back and forth virtually, but there hasn't been any hearing dates planned for that. The developer has decided to still pursue the site plan approval, which is the next step. And they are planned to go in front of Planning and Zoning Commission on, if everything goes well and the meetings are consistent, October 14th will be the site plan for the Cumberland Farms. The other thing that has been discussed with our staff in the building department is that to help expedite the process and also because of the delays of the court, the owner of the property may consider bringing the building down sooner, demolishing the building since it's obsolete. We're hoping that the project continues to go forward as planned. But even if this, for some reason, did not go forward for Cumberland Farms, having a clear 2-acre site on a corner of a Route 1 traffic lighted intersection would be more marketable than having the existing building there that, again, is obsolete. So they are having discussions now with the developer and the owner to go ahead and take the building down sooner than after it would be sold and then Cumberland Farms' responsibility. So I'm hoping that the bids are accepted by the developer. And once that gets agreed upon, they would change their contract to allow it. And then they may come in with applications to demolition the building, even though it's in court and even though they have to do the site plan approval. Probably site plan will be heard before the demolition would start, but I just wanted to give you an update that you may see progress happen even though there's still an appeal in court, which I think is positive for that area. I think there was a question from Barry. Let's see here. Apologize. What do I view the most important projects or initiatives over the next 6 months? Well, the three most important are to continue working with the Haven Group and getting these buildings down. That's a priority. There's a process involved with that, even though they have all their entitlements for the project and they have a site plan that's been approved. We're working with them and DOT and their contractor, demolition contractor, to finalize the paperwork that's still needed for the various buildings that are on the commercial side along the waterfront. 30 Elm Street is getting abated or has been abated, and then we're waiting for DOT, and then we'll work with the police department for closure of the lane while they take the building down. They won't take it from the street side. It'll come in from the back side or where the Connecticut refining side of the property is along Water Street and pull the building inside, but they still, for safety purposes, wanted to see Elm Street closed down, which we'll work with our traffic department for that once we get the approval from DOT. The buildings up further on Water Street, going closer to Main Street, those get a little more complicated because they have had arson and fire occur to those structures, which make them unsound and not safe for the abatement to occur. So there's a different process that goes on with a demolition like that. There's a request to have condemnation letters given, and we're working with our building department, Frank Gladwin, in our office and their contractor, and then ultimately it'll be presented to the Department of Public Health. Because the structures are not sound for them to do the abatement, to go on the roofs, let's say. So there is a process that has to be done when that procedure is requested. The material would be taken down as what they call hot, meaning contaminated, and then it gets separated on site, and then that gets trucked to a separate facility because it has contaminants that are environmentally sensitive, and that typically gets shipped outside the state. I don't want to bore you with the details of that, but it's a little more involved than just taking the buildings down, like Building 1 and 2 on 38 and 44 Elm Street, which was the gas station and the I call it the former Paisanos building, or they called it check cashing, I think is what Matt said. The next initiative is to continue getting these applications we have that have been backed up for the land use approvals. Like I said, we've been not able to hear meetings or have meetings publicly, and unfortunately, the city was not in support of doing virtual meetings, which I was a big proponent for back in March. So we lost about 6 months. But we're going to continue with this process until either we open the City Hall building up to have public meetings in-house. We'll just continue renting at a favorable amount the IA Club to continue having meetings publicly there. It's gone well so far, and we'll just continue that. But that's a priority because we need to get these projects approved, either heard or approved, but just in a position where the developers that are involved or the owners of the properties, they know where they stand and they could plan for either proceeding with, in some cases, construction over the winter months or fall months if the weather works for us, going into or planning for early spring after the winter. So that's a priority. And the third thing is staffing. You know, we are still short-staffed. We've been interviewing for inspectors. Thank you for approving the budget and supporting that. We've had some interviews so far. Unfortunately, none of the candidates we felt were a good fit or had the credentials necessary for the position. We have one slated for this Thursday, and we're going to continue with that process. I also have a short staff situation in the planning department. As you know, with COVID, Dave Colleen decided to take his retirement earlier than planned. And we wish him well. He was a great, tremendous asset to the city. Right now, we're trying to work with the staff we have to cover some of the roles that David had, and we'll continue to do that. But again, we're limited with people, and if someone's not in or sick, and it takes a toll, especially when we're doing extra meetings now to accommodate catching up on the meetings that were canceled all these times. So October and November are going to have several meetings happening at the Italian American Club to move these applications forward. So those are the three initiatives that I see are priority. But we're going to continue working with the property owners that we have been working with. I take calls and emails regularly from various council people in the public on the different other aspects of our jobs, which is sometimes blight calls. In terms of some planning ideas, I'd still love to see us move forward with doing a feasibility assessment of the Morris Park area. I think that's a tremendous asset that could benefit and help promote with the 2 parcels and the Chicks parcels and the Debonair site, with going along with the road raising that's happening in phase 1 on Beach Street. So all these things kind of tie in together. In Allentown, we have our Allentown plan, which we had put before David left. He did do a draft, and we're going to look to continue to implement that plan. I've had talks with the owners of the railroad salvage property. They're looking to do some type of redevelopment of that site. And we'd be open to that because, as you know, when ShopRite vacated, it left a large void in that area. The buildings are also antiquated and need to be redeveloped. So we are working with them to see if there's an option that we can assist in that process. I think that's all. I didn't want to answer any questions on the Haven unless they're specific. I think Matt did a good job, but I could answer any that maybe he did not answer in more detail that I could try my best to do. And I'll open it up to any questions if it's helpful. Councilwoman O'Connor?
Thank you, Fred. I know Councilwoman Hosky has a question or two.
Okay.
Hi, Fred. Thank you. I'm sorry? Oh, thanks for coming, tonight, Fred. I really do appreciate it. I just, couple questions. The due date for the bids, like, when do you expect, I know you can't tell us much about the Savin Rock Conference Center, but when do you expect to bring something more to the council? Like, do you think by the end of the year, maybe November, or no idea?
I really don't know. I would leave that question to, it's in the corporate counsel's hands. And I don't know if Lee's on the call or not. I can't tell. But maybe Lee could answer that.
I don't think he is.
Okay.
I'm on the call if you want me to answer.
Oh, I do.
Oh, yeah, so we're negotiating now with a couple of potential developers. I would expect that we'll be seeking approval for a public hearing on a proposal from the council before the end of October. And at that point, you know, prior to the public hearing, you'd have all available information, because I know people have questions, so that we get all the councilors' questions answered in advance of that public hearing, so that we could distribute the information to the public so that the public hearing goes well.
Thank you. Two more questions, please, Fred. Currently, I know the condo / development that is coming to where the Buckle Factory used to be in Christopher John Michaels. Can you when are they supposed to go before the wetlands? I know I'm saying that committee name wrong, but
So
and
an
can you
update
tell
on
me,
that.
are they changing their size? I'm sorry, and I
Are they
heard through
changing
the
their what? I'm sorry, you broke
grapevine
up.
that they are changing the number of condos they want to build. Has there been a change?
I don't know. I mean, I haven't gotten a formal, they're still working on their application, so it's hard for me to tell you that. But I can tell you that they did close on the property. So the good thing is it's not a subject to or contingent on a zoning approval, which really makes it a much different project. They're committed to the project. It's a very challenging site. It's made up of several parcels, as you're aware, not only on Campbell Avenue, but on Washington Avenue. And there are some wetlands. There's a substantial amount of environmental contamination they have to deal with. And besides the construction cost of a mixed-use development. So it is not a condo complex. It's an apartment complex. So I just want to clarify that. And we're waiting for the proposal. They are looking to work, it's in the village design overlay zone, which the Planning and Zoning Commission approved early this year or late last year. So they've been working with our volunteer architects on the design aspects to tie in not only Washington, it really has two fronts, right? You have the building on Washington Avenue, obviously, and then you have Campbell Avenue, and both buildings kind of have different feels. So they've been working with the designers and the professionals on the aesthetical impact that the project will have, but also making it feasible for their development. I believe some of the costs have run more than they originally anticipated, and that's more on the environmental side of things. But they are working to give us the best product also. The other issue that we've been dealing with, quite frankly, like I mentioned earlier, is not being able to have land use meetings. They initially wanted to have meetings, and where that also impacts this project in particular, very early on when I met with the developers, I indicated that they must have an open community comment opportunity prior to submission. I thought it would be a best way to introduce themselves to the neighborhood. Had them speak with the councilwoman in the district. It's imperative that they do that, but with COVID and the protocols placed, it makes it very difficult to even schedule that venue. And we're trying to figure ways on overcoming that. I think it'll be helpful once we have an increase to the numbers that are allowed. But again, these are challenges that have delayed them being able to come to land use while we didn't even have meetings happening. Now that we're having meetings happening, we're trying to schedule that. So the good thing is they're very open, and we have a good collaborative discussion back and forth. So my understanding is that they are looking at the design, but I haven't seen any changes. And to answer, I don't know the count of the amount of units. Now realize the amount of units are going to be dictated also by the amount of parking. So that's allowed. So that's going to be unless they came for a variance for that. So my understanding right now is that I haven't heard any unit count change.
Okay, so I have one more question. So
Sure.
I noticed right next to this land on that we were just talking about, 325, the old Mantilla Ford. I noticed fencing went up over the weekend, or maybe it was Friday. So I
Yes.
sent an email to you. So I sent an email to your guys, but then I got a letter in the mail today telling me, please be advised that the building located at 325 Campbell Avenue will be removed.
Yes.
That's not part of that. This is something else. They're just leveling the building for.
I think my understanding that their attempt, their attempt was to try to get the building down before October 1, so the taxes could be lowered. Realize this, any buildings that come after October 1, we get a full year of taxes for that structure. It's not prorated. They say they're taken down mid-October. So in this case, with that property that you just mentioned, they were trying to, and it was very late that they came to us, at least contacted our departments, meaning building department, to take the structure down. But my understanding, it's not part of the project at all. From my understanding, I've not been told anything like that. I think they just want to take it down, from my understanding, for tax purposes. And again, that building is an antiquated building. It has a good exterior look to it, but realize that was the old dealership. And that has challenges also with environmental and things of that nature. They've been marketing that building for several years since they closed. I know part of the property's rented to the VA for parking, and they have a parking agreement. I'm not sure if they also have one with the University of New Haven, but I know that they had it with VA. Now, yeah, just with VA, but yeah, so that's my understanding. It's just for taking it down for tax purposes.
All right, thank you. That's all I have, Chairman O'Connor.
Thank you. I know Councilwoman Hamilton has a question next.
Thank you, Chairman. Fred, going back to the Gold Medal building, it'd be good to see development there. I hope all goes well in court. Who maintains the property right now, like overflowing trash cans and stuff? Like sometimes I can see it flowing, and then sometimes I see it cleaned up. So somebody's doing something. Who's doing it?
I believe the current owner still, they send a crew to go there to maintain. I don't know I don't believe it's Cumberland Farms. But I could check with the property owner and get back to you.
Yeah, they might need to tighten up on their schedule. It is a bus stop. There is a trash can, but it looks unsightly. Like today, it looked awful. So if you could, that'd be great.
Sure.
The other thing, you said that you're looking to hire folks in the much needed building department. What are the credentials that you're looking for?
I believe the prerequisite could come from our personnel department, but they have to have certifications, a building official certification from the state of Connecticut is probably the biggest one to have. but the job description could be received from Beth Sabo, or I can ask to get it and send it over to the council, whichever, if you're asking.
That'd be great. It's still open. You're still looking for applicants, I take it.
Yeah. Oh,
Great.
yeah.
Yeah. If you could forward it to us.
Yeah, I think it's on the state website. The state has a building department website also for certified building officials. So, which I know they've been marketing, working with our office to find out different ways to market it. But yes, I can ask to get that from that.
Great. Thanks, Fred.
Sure.
All right, I can only see the last couple of people that spoke. So does anybody else have a question?
Councilwoman Johnston does.
All right, Councilwoman Johnston, you're up.
Hi, Fred. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm
I
good.
left you a
Thanks.
message.
You left me a message?
I did.
Oh, okay. I'll have to check.
Last week. Yeah.
This is about the weird building on Smith and Union.
Oh, yeah.
I know before you'd updated us that somebody new had bought it and they were trying to figure out zoning and blah, blah, blah. And so this is partly just a follow-up. Did they figure out what they're doing with it? But also, I think the storm did significant damage to the side of that. I've gotten a few phone calls and it looks like the siding was ripped off and there's like holes in the, it's pretty unsightly, but I think it also kind of looks unsafe. So just wondering if you could update about that.
I appreciate the question. I should have given that as a report. I know this has been an ongoing, long process for many, many years, since days of it being a non-conforming convalescent home. So yes, there is been a new developer, a new owner to the property. And we recently issued the building permits for that building. So I'm very happy to say it will be a very large 3-family house, which is what is permitted by zoning there. So we're going to be seeing some work starting or working going on there, and they have their sign-offs to go ahead and do that.
That's great news. Sorry, I didn't realize.
Yeah, we're very excited about that. That's been a project that's been taking much of the city's resources for the last, I would say, at least decade. So we're happy to say that we've worked through all the aspects of it, and we recently, last week, signed off both on the building side and on the zoning side for building permits to be issued for that. It's a success story.
Yes, it is, because it's been an eyesore for about a decade, even when it was inhabited.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Can I ask a follow-up question? Actually, this might be like a health director question, but when I hear about all of these antiquated buildings that are, needing abatement before they're torn down, like it makes me really concerned about the environment and our health. I mean, is there any science behind the idea that like all of this demolition with potential asbestos and other contaminants happening, close proximity and time-wise could be a health hazard? Just wondering. I mean, again, maybe you can't answer that.
But I could answer from my experience with these type of, properties. The contaminants that have been mentioned are in the construction materials for the most part. That's above soil, the structures themselves. And that's just the age of the construction. We have a lot of older buildings that are in our inventory. It makes it very difficult for redevelopment. In many cases, it's less expensive to take the building or structure down before building a new building than retrofitting one to make it to today's ADA, compliancy and building codes. Just due to the size of the hallways and rooms and ceiling heights and mechanicals and electricals and things of that nature. So I always tell people I'd like to see as many cranes in the city as possible because that will show progress. It's important to see many structures come down that are antiquated because they're just not marketable. So I think it's a positive. I don't think it's a negative on the health side, just simply for the fact that prior to the buildings being demolished, for the most part, they get remediated or encapsulated when they get remediated, so it stays in and they're certified contractors that do the work. And they have to keep records of the testing that comes in, and they have to report that not only on the city side, but on the state Department of Health, Public Health. So there's a regulated process for all of that. The soils, though, underneath some of these structures are contaminated. I mean, we're an older urban community, and it's just the history of those type of structures and buildings that were on top of it, the type of uses that also were on top of it. And that also makes it somewhat challenging, especially on some of the properties that you go by for many years and say, oh, why is that sitting like that? For the most part, it could be that. It's also because the state has a transfer act. I know it's been in the news more recently, but we're one of the 2 states in the country with New Jersey that have a transfer act policy. And there is a special responsibility of ownership and responsibility for maintaining and remediating these type of properties. And in many cases, it does make it unfeasible for development of some sites due to the Transfer Act requirements. So many commercial realtors are being at the forefront, and many other professionals in the industry have been urging the state to revisit the Transfer Act and to change the parameters that are necessary so that it will help develop some of the sites that have been sitting idle, and not just in West Haven, and all the communities in the state who have environmental characteristics that are necessary to be remediated before redevelopment can occur. And sometimes that makes it unfeasible. So, little thing to update you. But I wouldn't worry.
Councilor Johnson, Attorney Lee Tiernan, yeah, you shouldn't. Let me just go for a few things that everybody should have a level of comfort in terms of this when you see any development project or any construction project, including your high school, which is on your city staff. As short-staffed as we are in almost every department, we have qualified hazmat people in our building department currently, and they are very conscientious about doing a hazardous removal protocol, much sometimes to the chagrin of developers because they hold the line. You also have the state DEEP and EPA also weigh in. So there's no construction site where you should feel any discomfort or feel like you have any hazard that's going to happen, because there's a level of containment. When you talk about the burned buildings, it's just a different hazmat demolition procedure. They use basically water to keep dust down. There are a whole lot of different protocols that are mandated that have to take place, or else serious fines occur and they have to go back and do other cleanup. And in addition to that, when you have cases that involve brownfield money, there's an additional layer of oversight to make sure the projects are done well. If you go onto the DEEP website, you'll see even in every town is covered. You'll see in West Haven, I'll give you an example. The library had an oil storage tank. They removed it, so you'll see that an oil storage tank was identified, remediated, removed. So just for public health purposes, there are just a myriad of different protections. Nobody should feel like if there's any construction project, it's been vetted on any number of levels. For idleness, I can tell you, even when things are idle, when we get reports, those are also protected in the same way by our local health department, by DEEP, by the EPA. We recently had a site that was identified, and the state and EPA did come in to clean it because, frankly, we don't have the resources to do it. So we reached out and asked that they do that, and they did. So you should feel a level of comfort that we're not Love Canal. We do have a lot of protections in place, and there's no demolition going on that doesn't have a lot of protections that have been vetted and that are approved on both the state, local, and national level.
Thank you.
Great, thank you, Councilwoman. Is anyone who hasn't asked a question yet have a question? I know there are 2 council people that do have questions, but is there anyone that hasn't spoken yet? And remember, I can't see the screen. All right, Councilwoman Hamilton, you're up.
Okay, me again, Fred. I know that you might know a little something since you're in this arena of real estate. What's going on with Hotel Liquidator? There's some buzz going on about some kind of movement up there. Do you know what it is?
I could. The property was sold. My real estate office was involved with that. Again, that was a listing that we had prior to my hiring. So the property was sold, but in terms of what's going on with the site, the same tenants are staying there. The only one that is no longer there is the Lotus Lounge, which has been a problem for the city for several years.
Absolutely. I'm glad to see them go. You're saying that the same tenants are staying there though? There's no.
Well, there's only two. Yes, Hotel Liquidators is staying on site, and Happy Harry's is there also. There's only two tenants there.
I'm starting to see trailer trucks parked there, but that's another subject, I suppose. Like Eagle, somebody, lots of trucks. Might want to look into that more. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. I know Councilman Cohen also has another question. Councilman Cohen?
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question is really, I guess it's for Lee and for Fred, and I'll just let either of you jump in. It goes back to my original questions that I wrote on the Savin Rock Conference Center that were partially further addressed by, I believe, Councilwoman Hosky, and also the Armstrong building. Those were a couple of my original questions, and I thank you for your answers, but I do realize that we are, a public general meeting now where you can't share certain information because things are in progress and so forth. And, there's certain things that are in progress. But I was wondering that if we were to have an executive session at some point, I'm not saying tonight, but if we were to have an executive session at some point, would you be able to disclose more information to the council members, especially regarding the Savin Rock Conference Center, because perhaps you'll have more information on the bids and perhaps you might get information on Armstrong, because I realize it is public and I realize, confidentiality and non-disclosures and so forth. But would that be helpful if, if we did have an executive session on those couple of projects, or is that, I'm asking guys, how does that work?
Yeah, Councilor Collins. So on the Savin Rock Conference Center, it doesn't work. Under FOI, it's designed that the negotiation period be exempt from FOI so that we can get a clean negotiation. And the statutes also design it so that the city council will have a full public hearing. So there really is no reason. I know there's curiosity. I know you bite your nails and you really want to know. I know you got your constituents that call you and they want to know, but really to get the best deal, you have to wait. You have to wait till the best deal is negotiated. And then at the public hearing time, you get all the information you've ever desired. Every question gets asked, and that's the way the state's designed the process. If we don't adhere to that process, we're disadvantaging ourselves because we're opening ourselves up to potential manipulation of the negotiation process so that we don't get our best deal. So unfortunately, I don't think that would be a productive process for the Savin Rock Conference Center, but I can tell you, you're going to hear about that very soon. And you're going to have an opportunity to have a public hearing, so you'll have there won't be any stone unturned in that process, and it'll be very soon. The Armstrong building, I actually received another student intern from the UConn Law School who actually lives near the headquarters for Stop and Shop, which owns the parcel, which has the old Art Deco headquarters, which faces the Stop and Shop building. Stop and Shop, typically throughout the nation, it's a Dutch-owned company, and they purposely buy land adjacent and around their super Stop and Shops and other Stop and Shop facilities because they don't want competitors to build another Stop and Shop. So unfortunately, the history is that when they buy those structures, they don't really have a strong incentive to develop. As Commissioner Masori, I think, pointed out to the council before, there was a proposal years ago to have apartments at the site, but that was abandoned because the then the Planning and Zoning Commission was not interested. I've had my student attorney, we're going to be sending a letter to the Director of Real Estate at Stop and Shop and try to alert them that all the things that the city can assist them with in terms of encouraging their development. And that would include brownfield grants, explaining the zoning issues, explaining the benefits of the TOD district, et cetera, so that they understand that this is the perfect time to develop. And we'll also emphasize that we have a different Planning and Zoning Commission than we had that rejected the last proposal. I know the corner lot above, closer toward the police station, has been on the market. You know that the city owns a significant portion of land where, on the other side of the tracks, where we have facilities. There's a crossover bridge. So we're actually positioned well to have a good development, and all we have to do, in my view, and again, I have my student attorney working on that, is trying to make sure that Stop and Shop knows that we're trying to encourage them to, if you like, don't be offended, to get off their ass. Depending on how that process goes, Councilor Cohen, and assuming it doesn't, we're not yet negotiating with anybody in that process. So if I get some positive responses, if my student attorney gets some positive responses from their letters, I was actually going to have my student attorney present what's going on with that project in about 30 days. So I would be happy to do that, and that doesn't necessarily have to be an executive session.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, Lee. I'm sorry, go ahead, please.
No, and so I think we're going to get some movement, and we're going to know on the owner's side. Obviously, there's other people that have an interest that are going to make proposals to the owner. I've been in touch with the lawyer who represented the developer on the deal that went south years ago. He's talking to his clients. I think in the next 2 or 3 months, you're going to see that we may have more than one proposal for that site, believe it or not.
Well, okay. Yeah, because that site is, I mean, that site, if you will, it's all of that infrastructure facing, Elm Street and all the infrastructure facing Sawmill. I mean, it's a huge plot of old building, so it's amazing. But okay, well, thank you, and I appreciate the clarification regarding FOI. I wasn't sure how that worked, but now I do, and I'm keeping my fingers crossed in Armstrong. Thank you very much, Lee, and thank you very much, Fred. Appreciate it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilman. Does anybody else have any questions? Does anybody else have any questions? All right, Fred, thank you for showing up tonight. Thank you for answering the questions that were put before you. The time is now 8:14.
Councilwoman,
Yeah.
if I may just say, if anybody has any questions, outside of the meeting, feel free to reach out. I know some of you have reached out via email, or you could call me anytime, and I'll do my best to assist, so it doesn't have to be so long until we talk. I'm always available for you if there's pending questions, so please feel free to contact me. And thank you very much. Have a wonderful evening.
Great, thank you. All right, the time is 8:14 and the Committee on Redevelopment has ended.
Thank you, Councilwoman O'Connor. Next committee is the Legislative Matters Committee, Councilman Galignano.
Good evening, Chairman. The time is 8:14. Your Committee on Legislative Matters is now in session. I forget what I do. What do I need to do here, Mr. Chairman? Because I did recognize you first.
Just read who's in your committee.
Okay, that would be, hold on, let me pull that up. Sorry, guys. lost. Apologize.
Stacy could read off the members if you need to, Mitch.
That would be a lot quicker, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, we have members present are Councilman Bruno, Councilwoman Johnston, Councilwoman Finelli, Councilman Cohen, and yourself, Councilman, as the chairman, Galignano.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Before us, we have an ordinance with amendments to the code of the city of West Haven, Chapter 89, dogs. And Mr. Chairman, I believe I'd like to recognize you. You have something to add to this amendment?
I do. Thank you, Councilman Galignano. I just wanted to point information for the council before we begin our deliberations this evening. As you know, I think 2 meetings ago, we had a deliberation about this particular draft ordinance. And at that point, I had thought that there was some legislation that may already be on the books regarding this, but I couldn't find it. So just as a point of information to the council, Chapter 170 of the city code, as it refers to domestic animals, and then these are just specific to park and recreation areas, to be beach parking, the parks, but there is a section 28 of Chapter 170 that speaks to domestic animals. No person shall walk or permit any domestic animal owned by him or in his custody upon any park, recreation area, or sports facility or complex during a permitted event or activity. At any other time, said animal must be restrained by a leash, chain, or cord no greater than 6 feet in length. And that's Chapter 170-28. I don't know when it was originally adopted, but it was amended on December the 11th, 1995. So I just thought that that was important information for the council as they do their deliberations. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question would be, how would we don't have to do anything to amend to that, do we?
No, it was just a point of information. You could continue your normal committee business as you would. I believe that the ordinance at hand speaks to areas outside of the park and rec purview, like city streets and things like that.
So I would be looking for a motion in favor of this ordinance. Do I have a motion? I need Councilwoman Finelli has made a motion. Do I have a second? I have a second from Councilwoman Johnston and Councilwoman Bruno. Any discussion? All in favor? Any noes? I see one no from Councilman Barry Cohen. And any abstentions? Motion passes with majority, Mr. Chairman. And that concludes your business of legislative matters at 8:19.
Thank you, Councilman Galignano. Don't go too far.
I didn't move far. I just put water in my mouth.
Next up is unfinished business. We have none. We'll now enter in as a council as a whole for committee reports, and the first committee to be heard from is the Legislative Matters Committee. Councilman Galignano.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To the Honorable City of West Haven, your Committee on Legislative Matters, to whom was referred the matter and an ordinance with amendments to the Code of the City of West Haven, Chapter 89, reports that the committee met on the 28th day of September to consider said matter. It is the majority opinion of the committee that the following motion be presented. Second reading. I do read this whole thing, correct? 89-4 dogs at large. No person owning a dog or having custody of a dog shall permit such dog to roam at large to the injury or annoyance of others, annoyance specifically including the fouling of the city streets, sidewalks, footpaths, or beaches. If the dog does foul the area, the owner shall be responsible for cleaning it up. No dog shall be permitted at large upon the streets and other public ways and playgrounds of the city without the owner having control of such dog, either by leash, cord, or chain, not to be extended 6 feet in length. Such action is deemed to be a nuisance and a danger to public health and safety. New section 89-10 dog parks. Nothing in this chapter shall exclude the ability of dog owners to use the designated dog parks in the city of West Haven, and while in the designated areas, remove any restraints from their dogs, incurring all liability for such dog actions. Such areas in the city will be designated and posted as dog parks and shall also have written sets of rules clearly posted at the entrances.
Councilman Galignano has brought forward communication C from the 8/24/20 agenda from Councilwoman Finelli in regards to amendments to the Code of the City of West Haven, Chapter 89, dogs. Is there a second? Second, Councilwoman Hamilton, Johnston, Councilman Donovan, Councilman Massaro. Is there any discussion? Seeing no discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Councilwoman O'Connor and Councilman Cohen are opposed. Are there any abstentions? Okay, and that motion carries by majority.
And that concludes your business of legislative matters, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman Galignano. Or adoption of ordinances previously presented. There are none. Are there any council liaison reports for this evening? Seeing none at this time. Is there any new business? Councilman Donovan?
Thank you, Aaron Quagliani. Lee, are you still with us?
Yes, sir.
Lee, any update on Wilson, the sale of Wilson Ave and the properties there and Washington Avenue?
Yeah, Washington Avenue, the ad went in. We got no responses, so we're doing a deed. They have a lawyer. I'm working with a lawyer for that transaction to go. We got lucky. The council will note there's a small fence there. We're actually selling the fence, collecting a little more cash on that deal. And as to Wilson, the only interested party is the adjoining landowner. I gave her a chance to do something resembling a title search, but I don't think she has a desire for that. So we're probably going to have that transaction take place. I'll try to get it done this week, but if not, early next week. And then I assure the council that you will have other transactions before you for your next meeting.
Thank you, Lee. I'm all set, Chairman.
Councilman Cohen?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I got a question from a couple of constituents, and bear with me here, I apologize. I want to get it right here. They basically asked about, is the city going to, again, this is a question verbatim, is the city going to allow us to have Halloween this year? And let me preface this by saying, for my own 2 cents, it's like, you know what? It's a parent's decision, and neighbors that want to participate, you keep your lights on or off. But I've been asked this question a couple of times, and is the city considering an interceding, or they're going to take the Easter Bunny away? Are we going to have Halloween? You know, can someone answer that?
Well, the only one that's would maybe be Attorney Tiernan. Listen, I hope not, because I already bought my costume.
Yeah, I have to ask, you know.
Yes. So, fortunately, I think, is if you look in your ordinances, there's not an ordinance on Halloween.
Okay.
The charter. It is, I think, positively an unregulated activity. There was a joke made by a comedian recently that, why don't we go back to the good old days when you only had to worry about razors in our candy? It's COVID. But so look, my point in saying that graphically is that Halloween has had the nature of Halloween is there is some risk and there's, some difficulty and whatever. It is by nature an activity that does not lend itself positively in this era of COVID. I don't see how you could encourage, certainly, a typical Halloween experience while we're in COVID. The governor was asked about this. I don't believe he's issued an executive order on it or kind of suggested that maybe there are more important things to work on, but he did say that his staff would probably have some response to it. But that being said, you can imagine if I'm an elderly person who typically gives out candy, do I really want gaggles of children all, for a 2 to 3 hour period coming to my door? I would enjoy the costumes, but how high a risk is that? And then what do I do? Do I lock my door? There's actually a gentleman who's developed a device where he slides the candy down a tube or whatever. I don't think I'm going out on a limb to say that whatever Halloween is, it's going to be different this year. And hopefully there's some innovation and hopefully people still try to enjoy the holiday. But I can assure you that there is nothing right now to suggest that Halloween will be the same as it was last year or when you and I, Counselor, were children. So it's another part of it, or a lot of it will be another victim of this COVID era.
Thank you. Yeah, I haven't asked it. That's why I had to bring it up. I had one other thing, Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yeah.
And Lee, I don't know if this is for you or the mayor. I know that at the last meeting, we approved the adopt spot, and I was not able to find, maybe it's there and I haven't found it, the application forms. The only one that I know of was the one in our packets, but will there be a form online for either individuals or companies or businesses that are considering to adopt a spot, or are we waiting for a full list? I just wanted to be clarified of the next step in terms of that.
Yeah, I think that's the right one. And I will follow up with him. I thought I would have posted it, but if he didn't, I apologize for that. I'll make sure it is posted. I'm with you. I want many people to know about it as possible. In fact, I'm hoping that we actually promote overgrown and unsightly sites to encourage people to adopt. So I will get on that, but I appreciate you letting me know that that hasn't been done.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilman Cohen. Is there any other new business? Seeing none, I'll take a motion to adjourn. Councilwoman Hamilton, Councilwoman Hamilton, you're good?
No, I'm saying that Councilman Massaro had his hand up.
He did. Councilman Massaro, you've got 30 seconds. Go ahead. Here, I'll help you. Hang on. All right, try now.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
All summer long, this got a little bit under my skin. All summer long, that's all I heard about the basketball courts up by the Nike site. Last week, myself and a couple other council people were up there to cut the ribbon with the mayor and everything. It came out real nice. Then today, I see a picture on Facebook that the basketball courts got completely trashed. And it's totally ridiculous that we spent a lot of money up there and there's no concern of what we are trying to do to help make the city look good. My personal opinion, if it happens again, we should shut it down. Maybe I'm wrong saying that, but if people can't keep it nice, like we spent a lot of money there, I think we should not open it anymore. That's my own personal opinion. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Massaro. Is there any other new business in front of the council this evening? Okay, seeing none, I'll again take a motion to adjourn. Councilman Massaro, Councilwoman O'Connor, we are adjourned. Thank you all very much, and I hope you have a nice rest of the evening.
Bye all.